We always love it when we can say only on CBS Mornings, especially when it comes to revealing the latest selection in Oprah's book club. Her new pick is called That My Bird Has My Wings, the autobiography of an innocent man on death row. It's written by Jarvis Jay Masters is his name. And more than 20 years ago, Masters was sentenced to death by lethal injection for a crime he was never accused of committing. You heard me right, never accused of committing. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, spoke with Oprah about why she picked this book. And then he also interviewed Masters from outside California's San Quentin State Prison.
The man who's now the centerpiece pick of Oprah's book club lives deep inside of San Quentin, California's oldest prison.
My name is Jarvis Masters. I've been in San Quentin for 35 years.
This video of Jarvis Jay Masters from 2016 provides a rare look at the place that holds the largest population of death row inmates in the country.
Step back away from the cell, please.
There's no way to show you more because it's against California law to bring cameras into state prisons to interview a specific prisoner. But inmates may call out.
You have a prepaid call from
Jarvis Masters,
an inmate at the California State Prison, San Quentin.
Hello, Jarvis. Good morning.
Hey, is this David? How you doing?
I am well. How are you feeling this morning?
Well, you know, I'm nervous, for sure.
Nervous why?
Nervous because I'm talking to CBS. I mean, who does that, you know?
Jarvis Masters arrived at San Quentin in 1981 from Long Beach, California, where police first picked up the runaway boy at the age of 6. He'd been abandoned by his mother and father. And that life prepared him for prison gang life.
Tell me about this armed robbery that you committed.
Which ones?
How many were there?
There were a bunch of them. I got convicted of maybe 14, 15.
Wow.
I had ran away from a youth authority. I just needed the money.
You've written 2 books, Finding Freedom, That Bird Has My Wings.
Yeah.
That Bird Has My Wings is the reason we are talking today. It was picked for Oprah's book club. What was your intention for writing that book?
My intention for writing that book was to speak to the kids, people who were at risk. I saw all those faces in that book when I wrote it. More and more, I began feeling like I was telling their story as well as mine.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And it's interesting, Oprah, because when you interview an inmate, you only have about 6 minutes and then the phone cuts off and they have to call back.
Were you were able to talk to him and actually hear his voice?
Yeah.
Wow.
Jarvis Masters. How'd you first hear the name?
I was interviewing Pema Chodron, the Buddhist monk, spiritual teacher.
Pema Chodron wrote the introduction.
I kept wanting things to go differently for this promising young boy, but the blunt truth is that things didn't go differently.
And she suggested that I read the book, and that was, I think, around 2014, over 8 years ago. I read the book, loved the book, wanted to choose the book as a book club then, or at least get an interview with him then. I called the then governor of California. I appealed to the entire prison system. I wrote letters, I called, my team called. We could not get an interview.
Jarvis Masters, now a Buddhist, wrote about his journey from a hardened street kid whose life took an even more terrible turn 4 years into his 20-year armed robbery sentence. That's when prison guard Howell Dean Birchfield was killed by inmates in a single stab wound to the heart. And though Jarvis Masters was never accused of committing the murder, he was accused of making the device to commit the crime.
When I was charged with it, I never understood why I was charged for it. Really didn't try to put up a defense. You know, I was 20-something years old. Yeah, I know these is going to sound strange to people, but, you know, at that time, I wanted to leave the prison and then go to a courtroom.
Did you have anything to do with making the tool, the instrument that was used to kill him?
Absolutely not. No.
The record shows at the 1990 court sentencing that the judge said, quote, "He was born into hell. He was born for reasons it is almost impossible for me to comprehend. If people don't want children, they shouldn't have them." Apparently, his mother didn't know how to not have them. And he's now in his 60s, and that statement still sticks with him today.
Wouldn't it stick for somebody saying, Not only somebody, but somebody who's sentencing you to death, saying you should have never even been born.
I said to him on the call, Jarvis, what happened to you?
Wow.
And his voice changed and he said, oh man. And he took us back to Long Beach. At 12, I was arrested for committing the first crime. And he said, I was a young boy when I walked into the house and I heard that my latest foster mom and stepdad were telling the social worker they were seriously ill and that the boy would have to leave. And he said it was the first time I thought, oh no, I don't want to leave this place.
And that just turned my world upside down, even before I got into these other foster homes. You know, I felt betrayed, you know.
What was it in the book that really sparked a fire for you?
One of the things that sparked the fire for me, he talks about the thing that carried him through life was holding on to the love that people had shared with him. In spite of, his mother being a heroin addict, in spite of all the crazy, violent things that were happening in their house, and that moment you believe that no matter what, my mother loves me, no matter how many times you've been abandoned. It's the love that carries you through. It's the love that allows you to, in the end, fulfill yourself. And so his ability to even reform himself came from understanding that somewhere inside there was enough still there worthy of love.
So some people will hear this and say, a death row inmate, Oprah's book club. What's the intention behind the pick?
You know that's my favorite word. Number one, my intention is to expose the story. Number two, my intention is to let people know that there are a lot of people on death row and a lot of people in prison for whom there has been a miscarriage of justice. And in this case, I believe there has been a miscarriage of justice. I do not believe that the crime that he is on death row for, that he was involved in or committed.
Oprah Winfrey has gone so far as to help find a team of defense lawyers that is now led by Michael Williams, an attorney with Kirkland & Ellis, the world's largest law firm.
At the time that Jarvis was convicted, the state of California had in their possession a confession by another individual saying that he had committed the crime, not Jarvis.
These are 3 people critically involved in the case.
That's right.
And it was their testimony that was used to convict Jarvis Masters.
Yes. When you have an innocent man on death row, it's not just one person who said something that was wrong.
The people who are now saying that Jarvis didn't do it are the key crucial characters who were actually convicted of doing it.
Yes, or pleaded to doing it.
So the case was built on the words of these people.
Exactly.
And now their words are changing.
Exactly. Now their words
Wow.
have long since changed.
Wow.
And we have a judge appointed by the California Supreme Court who said, yes, I've heard that they've changed their testimony. True. But that just shows that they're not credible. And so why should I believe them?
Well, then why should we believe the conviction was right in the first place?
That's exactly our point.
The Jarvis I'm speaking to now sounds like a soft, reflective man. The Jarvis you're telling me about seems scary and intimidating. What changed you?
I think what changed me is becoming 23 and now becoming 60. And everything in between that. Yes, Buddhism helped me. It really, really exposed the suffering that we all live inside of. Growing up inside the violence here, knowing what violence does to people, it changed you. Just changed you.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Part of the reason that his story is so extraordinary is because he has been living in hell for 40 years. People who are on death row, people go crazy, they kill themselves, they become really cynical and bitter and angry, and he did the opposite.
David Sheff, an award-winning author who wrote the book The Buddhist on Death Row, says he found evidence that Jarvis Masters has helped people while in prison.
So Jarvis embraced this new path of committing himself to trying to alleviate suffering in every way that he could. He stopped at least 2 people from being stabbed in the yard. And why was he able to look in the face of a prison guard and see this guard's anguish and reach out to help him? Why did he intervene when this guy who was this gay kid who was brought into the prison who absolutely was going to be killed, and yet at a time when he could have been killed for intervening, he stepped up and he got in the way of this.
You think he's innocent?
I'm 100% convinced he's innocent. I read it all. I believe that if he had had real representation, that he never would have been convicted.
Given all the pain you endured as a child, given the decades that you've spent in prison and on death row, has your life been worth it?
That's a good question. I'm glad that my mother gave me a chance. I'm glad she gave me a chance.
Jarvis, do you think you'll die in prison?
One day, I swear to God, I don't think I'm getting out of here. Next day, I think I'm getting out, and they go back and forth. My whole trip is how do I accept both possibilities, both outcomes, and live with that?
Jarvis Masters' next step to arguing for his exoneration is going to take place in a hearing in federal court on October 27th. The state of California's Attorney General's office will have a chance to then counter. But in response to our request for an interview, the state wrote that it refused to answer our questions.
I know Oprah's been talking about this story for years. I still don't understand why he is on death row still.
Well, it's fascinating, Gayle, in that he's the guy who's on death row, but he was never accused of actually committing the murder.
Exactly.
And the people who actually were convicted of committing the crime are not on death row.
Exactly.
That, for starters, is like, wait, what?
Right. It's very strange, and it's a reminder that, we always talk about guilty without a shadow of doubt. I mean, the shadow over the criminal justice system in general is pretty large at this point, and it's troubling.
Look, and he's been trying. He's got a powerhouse defense team now. They're going to go to the federal court system and basically say the state erred. And at the end of the day, if the federal court system decides that his constitutional rights were violated, Jarvis Masters has already served his sentence for armed robbery. So if his conviction is thrown out, he essentially
He's a free man?
could be released.
Wow. Let's see what happens. No one wants criminals to go free, but at the same time, you don't want innocent people to be serving beyond what they should. All right, David, thank you very much. That's a great piece and a great selection for the new Oprah Book Club pick.